Greetings, fellow conquerors. This is darkfireslide, and welcome to Total War Shogun 2, or at least a video about it. I've been playing this game a lot lately, and I thought I would make a video about it because, well, I haven't been playing EU4, as I'm sure that those of you who watch the channel have noticed. Now, that doesn't mean that I hate EU4 and that I want to stop playing it. There was a time where I was kind of sick of it and I didn't want to play it anymore, and that time has passed. I want to play EU4. The problem is, I don't want to play EU4 as much as I want to play other games at the moment. Now that being said, I do plan on releasing more Pirates of Pomerania, and I'm also working on getting live streaming. So that may be something you see in the near future, now that I have internet capable of supporting that. I've just been very busy lately with school and work, and yeah, I don't really have any excuses apart from that. Now some people will be like, oh, there's plenty of excuses. I don't know. I feel like I'm letting people down. But anyway, enough of that. Let's talk about a game. So this is Total War Shogun 2. So those of you who haven't heard of Total War at this point, and you're a strategy gamer, I am surprised because this is kind of one of the only strategy games really left in terms of big budget, big sales, and big gameplay. Um, big everything really, and big unit sizes, 160 guys per regiment, and lots of billions and billions of arrows. Big. It's all big, and it's bombastic, and we love it because that's what Total War is, and it's great. It's fantastic, and yet there are some issues. So I played a full Fall of the Samurai campaign, which is an expansion that sets the game during the Meiji Restoration period, or the Boshin War, it was also called, where Japan was modernizing. So there's just rifle units everywhere, and there's this interesting dynamic that happens with the technology where you can decide not to upgrade your troops, and so you'll have these veteran katana wielding samurai going up against modern riflemen and line infantry. So just super super interesting there. But this is the classic Shogun 2, just completely vanilla, no mods, and it's wonderful. I absolutely adore Shogun 2. It is, in my opinion, the best, most balanced, and most fun and replayable Total War uh, of the historical ones. I can't speak much about Total War Warhammer, unfortunately. I haven't played them. I've heard they're great, but those reviews have also been from mainstream critics, so who knows? With the recent Cuphead controversy, it's hard to say anymore whether or not you can trust reviewers, which is unfortunate. But that's kind of getting into Total War's history. What I actually want to talk about today is kind of how Total War led me into EU4 and the things that I found when I made that transition. Now, I still love both series, but EU4 has got to be, in my opinion, the best strategy game I've ever played and may ever play, really. Which is a stretch, because some people are going to say, well, what about Victoria 2? That's my favorite. You're wrong. Well, of course, it's a matter of opinion. Especially when it comes to grand strategy games, it's a matter of opinion. But Total War is kind of where I started with grand strategy. Now, to be fair, to be completely frank, Total War's strategy layer has not really been the most complicated. Now, it has gotten better over the years, and from what I understand about Total War Warhammer, there's a lot more strategic depth than before. And factions all play quite differently, have different end objectives to actually go for. Whereas in classic Total War like this, of course I say classic, this isn't even one of the older ones where the map was still two-dimensional. Not bashing those older games though. Total War Rome and Total War Medieval 2, both great games. Medieval 2 being my favorite for a long time, until I finally gave up and gave into Shogun, basically. But it's not to disparage it at all. All fantastic games, even though I'm going to say some arguably negative things about them now. Because yeah, the meat and potatoes of Total War is this battle screen. These battles that play very much just like a real-time strategy game. But the difference is that you do strategy on a campaign map as if it were like Civilization. So you take turns building units and then eventually sending them into these kinds of battles. And speaking of battles, this is a battle on my hard campaign as the Uesugi clan, which are kind of these. It's kind of this Buddhist monk-ish clan. Um, so they get a special unit. So the thing is about Shogun 2, every clan has the same unit roster, but every clan gets a certain unit that they specialize in. So for Uesugi, their special unit that they specialize in is the warrior monk. Unfortunately for me, I haven't had the money to get those yet, and so I'm stuck with these bow peasants instead, and these katana samurai, and these Yari spear samurai as well. And even though that's like really simple, since everyone gets the same troops, you can kind of say the same thing about EU4, and really it works because unit veterancy makes a huge makes a huge difference in this game. And that's something that's actually kind of coming up with EU4. With the next expansion, the Cradle of Civilization, we're looking forward to a this change that's going to add in this army professionalism mechanic that might finally Paradox might have finally, thank God, made it so that there's a point to using something other than mercs. Because Army Professionalism, if it's kept at the same bonuses that it was, is going to change EU4 in a way that hasn't been changed since, like, development happened. Like, and I would actually argue that Army Professionalism makes a bigger difference than, wow, the impact of that is completely lost now. The impact of this is going to be even bigger than when they change technology to be institution-based as opposed to technology group-based. That's how big Army Professionalism is going to be in EU4. And I think it's a change for the better. I think that professional armies should dominate the battlefield, especially the more you're able to train with them. Now, I do think that they kind of stole the drilling mechanic from Hearts of Iron 4, but I mean, they've also stolen mechanics from Crusader Kings 2, so EU4 does kind of have a Frankenstein thing going on at the moment. But that's okay. I think that it's for the better. And we're going to see. Maybe Army Professionalism will actually ruin the game instead of making it better. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. And you can see some one of the things I love about Shogun 2 is it's in this weird engine that's meant for line warfare, and yet these animations look gorgeous. Units usually don't clip in Shogun 2, whereas in Rome 2 and Attila, they definitely do. And so this just looks really, really good still, and I really, really like Shogun 2's aesthetic quite a lot, in addition to the gameplay, which of course is the main reason you should play any game in the first place. But that's not necessarily true either. I've played games before just because they look good. Now, admittedly, it's not like AAA. It usually has to be for a pretty good art style. And of course, staying relevant, something like Cuphead, for example, would be a game I would play based on its aesthetic more so than its gameplay. Although, to be fair, it does also look pretty damn fun, if I do say so myself. But let's not delve into that. Let's stay on topic. So I love Total War, even though the meat and potatoes of the game is definitely this tactical combat, where units engage in these formations that are very, very much like realistic formations. And admittedly, of course you can never achieve like true realism unless you played like basically like unless you like join the military, played like an actual like war game, right? But then again, they probably don't actually have those for like this era of combat. So this is probably the closest we're gonna get, to be completely honest. Now I have to be careful here and not get too close to this side of the field. There are actually so many models on the screen right now that my PC can't handle recording and like seeing this many units at the same time. It actually crashed the game trying to record this the first time. But as you can see, just this massive swarm of units running into the spear wall, and the spear wall is kind of getting completely overwhelmed because of this. There just aren't enough spears. Same thing is kind of happening over here. Because in this siege, my troops are almost outnumbered 3-1. It is a force of 3,000 of mine versus 7,500 enemy troops. So more than twice than what we have, which is definitely pretty painful. So I had to get a little bit creative here and kind of funnel them. because there are a lot. There are so many units on this field right now. I wish I could watch it, but man, my PC just cannot handle it while recording. Which is a shame because Shogun 2 is actually normally a pretty stable game. But let's talk about Shogun. Let's talk about Shogun 2 in the context of the series of Total War. So I love Total War. It's actually the first grand strategy game I played, as I said earlier in the video. And even though the grand strategy elements are light, there's definitely a lot of planning that you have to do with how you know, build up your units, how you build up your economy, and you have to balance these things just as you would in a strategy game. Now, admittedly, it's a lot more cut and dry. It's a lot more simplistic overall by comparison to something like EU4 or any other grand strategy game for that matter. But that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just that it's a light salad of grand strategy rather than the meat and potatoes, which is fine. But it also left me yearning for something, and that's kind of where I got into EU4. Is it's like, oh, hey, this is a grand strategy game, but it's deeper than something like Civilization. It's deeper than Total War on the strategy level, even though there's no like tactical combat. And at first, I thought because of Total War's unique formula, where you build units on a campaign map and then you fight them out in these battles, I thought I was going to hate EU4 at first. I'm like, it's going to be so boring. It's just going to be units on a map doing cheesy things, probably doing dice rolls, and of course, EU4's dice rolls, am I right? Sometimes, man. Like, why do you always roll a 0 when I need you to roll at least a 2? Just once, if I could find out why these generals always do this to me. But anyway, no, the first time I played EU4, I was very confused, but once I learned the game, I realized that, like, there's just something so special about the way that the diplomacy works in EU4 compared to pretty much any game like Civilization or Total War. Because in Civilization, it's horrible. In Total War, the diplomacy is a joke. For example, if you've been fighting somebody for, we'll say, like 40 turns, which would be like 10 years in this game, unless you have destroyed their army and you outnumber an enemy AI by enough, basically the AI will never surrender. And you can enter these awkward Cold War stages sometimes where you haven't fought for like 30 turns, and then suddenly an army will show up. You kill the army, still doesn't matter, we're not going to surrender. You can take like 5 provinces, we won't surrender anyway. And until you're like at their last like stronghold, their last province, and you've defeated their army, and you haven't taken the province yet, then they'll be like, oh, let's have peace. That sounds like a really good idea. Will you give me peace? Will you consider that? So obviously this is a far cry from EU4, and honestly, EU4's peace mechanics are pretty great because it gives you this sense of I'm negotiating something, I'm getting something for myself, and being clever on a strategic level. Whereas being clever on the strategic level in Shogun 2 is being like, well, do I get more money or do I get more experience for my troops? At least in Shogun 2. In other Total War games, it means different things, and Warhammer might actually have shored up the AI like a lot more, but I'm also a little bit doubtful of that. That being said, Total War is still just like a fantastic game, and EU4 is also a fantastic game. But it's important to note what these games can learn from each other. And if there's one thing that EU4 can learn from Shogun 2, it's the combat. Because let's be honest, EU4 is a grand strategy game, it's about strategy. And admittedly, let's be honest, there isn't much you can do to tactically influence a battle in EU4. Basically, the deepest tactically that EU4 ever gets is either A, choosing terrain to defend in or attack in, which could be argued to be more of a strategic decision than a tactical one, or making sure to reinforce with troops at the right time so that troops aren't sitting in the reserve just losing more and more morale. And those are about your options. Otherwise, tactically, EU4 doesn't really have that much because it's all simulated for the sake of, you know, getting the game on. And not having to actually, you know, do something crazy like this where basically Creative Assembly, the makers of Total War, have to make 2 separate games. They have to make a turn-based 4X game and a real-time tactics strategy game based on whatever medieval or whatever history period they decide to make their game in. But Total War could also stand to really stand to learn from how EU4's diplomacy works. For example, it's kind of funny because I actually think that EU4's peace mechanic is actually one of the easier things to understand about the game. So the war in EU4 has a very, a very set flow and pace. You start out a war, you have manpower, you have money, and as war drags on, you lose manpower, you lose money, you get more willing to accept peace deals. And this goes true for the AI as well. And it's actually nice because it gives the AI something other than money, or just raw amount of provinces to actually agree on. And with a war score system, which is also something I think I would be okay if Total War completely stole a war score system in their next historical title. Now I get that it's Total War and the game's about war and it's about battle, but also EU4 has tons of war in it, and EU4 has brutal wars in it. Wars where literally hundreds of thousands of people die, especially in the late game where things just get insane. There's even screenshots of people having like 1,000,000 people on each side in a battle somehow. And so Total War could really stand to learn from EU4 in that respect, like adding things like war score, or more AI reasons to accept or get out of war, or more AI reasons to accept alliances and keep them, so long as they strategically interest them. And these are the sorts of things that would be really cool, and also expanding things like dynasties and having wars of succession, things like that. A lot of people say that the dream is having a game with politics like EU4, and having in that same game battles like Total War. And admittedly, that would be an amazing game. I don't think that any computer could support that many models on screen at a time, unless it was a rig pulling from multiple systems, and the game actually allowed for multiple processor support or multiple processor core support. Um, But these games could stand to learn from each other because they're not perfect. There's always something, I think. But to be fair, I think there's something in every game you'd be like, well, I think that this small change would make it better, but that doesn't make the game bad by any stretch of the imagination. But that's kind of the breakdown, right? So EU4 could stand to have more of a tactical layer, perhaps. Now some people will say, well, it's a strategy game. I don't want, for example, we don't want situations like this where a completely outnumbered, outclassed unit won just because of positioning and luck for the most part. And although that does happen in EU4 because of the dice roll mechanic, most of the time it's pretty easy to gauge when you are and aren't going to win a battle. Very rarely in EU4, especially if you're a smart player, do you take battles where you're not sure if you're going to win. Whereas in Total War, one of the cool things about it is if you see an army that's your same size, you often want to actually fight those battles simply because you actually get the chance to, there's a chance you can change the outcome of that battle. And another thing about it is that you get a chance to give your units experience, and that's something else that EU4 could really stand to have, is maybe regimental experience. Kind of like Hearts of Iron, actually. So that units that fight for a long time have kind of a tradition or something where and admittedly military tradition, of course, but on an individual unit basis, this would actually be, I think, a way to really give an advantage to nations who are willing to battle a lot and spend manpower on battles instead of just, well, my army's bigger than yours, so I'm just going to siege everything and then end the war. And that is something that I really like about Total War, opposed to EU4. Now that being said, I love both of these series. This battle is getting very close to the end. And I think it's still up in the air who's going to win. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to go ahead and let it play. And if you guys want to see more videos like this in the future, just let me know. I know that I haven't been making a lot of content lately. I know it's been really pissing off a lot of you guys, and I apologize. That's my bad. I need to just you know, get back to making videos again, like I was before. Especially now that it's not such a hassle to upload anymore. Um, and yeah, if you want, if you know, if there's enough votes in the comments, I could actually do a series on Total War. I'd be more than happy to start a series on it, because I can actually stand to run 2 series at a time now. And if that's something you're interested in, let me know, because I would be happy to do it. And of course, expect more EU4 content in the future. I will probably be doing EU4 until EU4 dies, and that will probably be when EU5 comes out, if it's any good, you know. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Now, that being said, Paradox does make quality products most of the time, but you never know. But yeah, so this has just been a brutal battle. Look at all of the bodies. But anyway, finally at this point, my general charges into their general, and he dies. And although I don't think that was the, I don't think that was the right general. I think that one of these generals eventually dies. That finally causes the rest of the troops to rout, and I will eventually win this. But it was such a brutal battle. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching it, because this was just such a crazy battle to actually play. I mean, look at the carnage, right? And another thing I want to remark on is Shogun 2 is just such a beautiful game. I love the art style in this game. For a 3D game, they really did a great job just making this game look so iconic and just having such great, like... It's weird because, like, the fidelity doesn't hold up to, like, modern games, but the art style definitely does, and it just looks so good, even to this day. And this is on DirectX 9, by the way, because I had to turn the graphics down to actually get this, because it kept crashing when I would try to record, just because there's so many units on screen. Now, I believe we finally get the general here, which means that the rest of these units are finally going to retreat, and victory is mine, despite a brutal and devastating siege, wherein I believe 80% of my units were destroyed, which results in a heroic victory for the Uesugi. Anyway, once again, thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys want to see in the future. If you want to see more videos like this, where I just kind of talk and compare things. I've also been thinking about doing a series for kind of like newcomers to strategy games, just kind of like in general. Talking about things like strategy versus tactics, a basic understanding of what strategy is, what to look for when you make strategies, what makes a good strategy, things of that nature. And I'm also looking to live stream. If you're interested in any of those things, just let me know in the comments. And I want to start delivering more content. So, thanks again, guys. And I'll see you on the next one.